I am reading some good words of Mr. Buffett, president of Berkshire Hathaway. These are the good words I have found in the Berkshire annual report from 1977 until nowadays. 1977. Except for special cases, for example, companies with unusual debt-equity ratios or those with important assets carried at unrealistic balance sheet values, we believe a more appropriate measure of managerial economic performance to be return on equity capital. We select our marketable equity securities in much the same way we would evaluate a business for acquisition in its entirety. We want the business to be 1. That we can understand, 2. With favorable long-term prospects, 3. Operated by honest and competent people, and 4. Available at a very attractive price. In the longer run, however, we feel that many of our major equity holdings are going to be worth considerably more money than we paid. Ensuite, sur l'attitude propriétaire des managers. Ben is now 75, and like Jenna Begg, 81 at Illinois National, and Louis Vincenti, 73 at Wesco, continues daily to bring an almost passionately proprietary attitude to the business. This group of top managers must appear to an outsider to be an overreaction on our part to an OEO built-in on age discrimination. While unorthodox, these relationships have been exceptionally rewarding, both financially and personally. It is a real pleasure to work with managers who enjoy coming to work each morning and once there, instinctively and unwillingly think like owners. We are associated with some of the very best. Donc, sur l'achat sectoriel. Although a mistake, the Wambeck acquisition has not been a disaster. Certain portions of the operation are proving to be valuable additions to our decorator line, our strongest franchise at New Bedford, and it is possible that we may be able to run profitably on a considerably reduced scale at Manchester. However, our original rationale did not prove out. During 1981, we came quite close to a major purchase involving both a business and manager we liked very much. However, the price finally demanded, considering alternative uses for the funds involved, would have left our owners worse off than before the purchase. The empire would have been larger, but the citizenry would have been poorer. Currently, we find values most easily obtained through the open market purchase of fractional positions in company with exceptional business franchises and competent, honest managements. We never expect to run these companies, but we do expect to profit from them. If you have owned 0.01 or 1% of Berkshire during the past decade, you have benefited economically in full measure from your share of our retained earnings, no matter what your accounting system. Proportionately, you have done just as well as if you had owned the magic 20%. But if you have owned 100% of a great many capital-intensive businesses during the decade, retained earnings that were credited fully and with painstaking precision to you under standard accounting method have resulted in minor or zero economic value. This is not a criticism of accounting procedures. We wouldn't like to have the job of designing a better system. It is simply to say that managers and investors alike must understand that accounting numbers are the beginning, not the end of business valuation. Within this gigantic auction arena, it is our job to select businesses with economic characteristics, allowing each dollar of retained earnings to be translated eventually into at least $1 of market value. Despite a lot of mistakes, we have so far achieved this goal. In doing so, we have been greatly assisted by Arthur Hawkins' patron saint for economists, Saint Offset. In some cases, that is, retained earnings attributable to our ownership position have had insignificant or even negative impact on market value, while in other major positions, the dollar retained by an investing corporation has been translated into $2 or more of market value. To date, our corporate overachievers have more than offset the laggards. If we can continue this record, it will validate our efforts to maximize economic earnings, regardless of the impact upon accounting earnings. As we look at the major acquisitions that others made during 1982, our reaction is not envy, but relief that we were non-participants. For in many of these acquisitions, managerial intellect wilted in competition with managerial adrenaline, the thrill of the chase blinding the pursuers to the consequences of the catch. Pascal's observation seems apt. It has struck me that all men's misfortunes spring from the single cause that they are unable to stay quietly in one room. Your chairman left the room once too often last year and almost starred in the acquisition follies of 1982. In retrospect, our major accomplishment of the year was that a very large purchase to which we had firmly committed was unable to be completed for reasons totally beyond our control. Had it come off, this transaction would have consumed extraordinary amounts of time and energy, all for a most uncertain payoff. If we were to introduce graphics into this report, illustrating favorable business developments of the past year, 2 blank pages depicting this blown deal would be the appropriate centerfold. At one early point, when her tiny resources ran out, Mrs. B, a personal trademark now as well recognized in Greater Omaha as Coca-Cola, copped in a way not taught at business schools. She simply sold the furniture and appliances for her home in order to pay creditors precisely as promised. Book value is an accounting concept, recording the accumulated financial input from both contributed capital and retained earnings. Intrinsic business value is an economic concept, estimating future cash flow output discounting to present value. Book value tells you what has been put in. Intrinsic business value estimates what can be taken out. Keynes identified my problem. The difficulty lies not in the new ideas but in escaping from the old ones. My escape was long delayed, in part because most of what I had been taught by the same teacher had been and continues to be so extraordinarily valuable. Ultimately, business experience, direct and vicarious, produced my present strong preference for businesses that possess large amount of enduring goodwill and that utilize a minimum of tangible assets. We believe most lovers of chocolate prefer it to candy costing 2 or 3 times as much. In candy as in stocks, price and value can differ. Price is what you give, value is what you get. 1983. Goodwill is a gift that keeps giving. I think it's a good explanation of the goodwill. The Intelligent Investor by Ben Graham. The last section of the last chapter begins with, investment is most intelligent when it is most businesslike. With our financial strengths, we can own large blocks of a few securities that we have thought hard about and bought at attractive prices. Bill Rose describes the problem of over-diversification. If you have a harem of 40 women, you never get to know any one of them. Very well. Dividend. Once an informed guess is made, the rest of the analysis is simple. You should wish your earnings to be reinvested if they can be expected to earn high returns, and you should wish them paid to you if low returns are the likely outcome of reinvestment. The 3 companies each originally made their money from a single business. 1. Textiles at Berkshire, 2. Department stores at Diversified, and 3. Trading stamps at Blue Chip. These cornerstone businesses, carefully chosen, it should be noted by your chairman and vice chairman, have respectively 1. Survived but earned almost nothing, 2. Shriveled in size while incurring large losses, and 3. Shrunk in sales volume to about 5% its size at the time of our entry. Who says you can't lose them all? Only by committing available funds to much better businesses were we able to overcome these origins. It's been like overcoming a misspent youth. Clearly, diversification has served us well. You may remember the wildly upbeat message of last year's report. Nothing much was in the works, but our experience had been that something big popped up occasionally. This carefully crafted corporate strategy paid off in 1985. I ignored Kant's advice, the intellect should be the servant of the art, but not its slave, and believe what I prefer to believe. 1985. This devastating outcome for the shareholders indicate what can happen when much brain power and energy are applied to a faulty premise. The situation is suggestive of Samuel Johnson's horse. A horse that can count to 10 is a remarkable horse, but not a remarkable mathematician. Likewise, the textile companies that allocates capital brilliantly within its industry is a remarkable textile company, but not a remarkable business. When I was 12, I lived with my grandfather for about 4 months, a grocer by trade. He was also working on a book, and each night he dictated a few pages to me. The title, Brace Yourself, was How to Run a Grocery Store and a Few Things I Have Learned About Fishing. My grandfather was sure that interest in these two subjects was universal and that the world awaited his views. You may conclude from this section's title and contents that I was overexposed to Grandpa's literary style and personality. The Patrick Henry approach. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. You will notice that we had a significant holding in Beatrice companies at your end. This is a short-term arbitrage holding, in effect a parking place for money, though not a totally safe one, since deals sometimes fall through and create substantial losses. We sometimes enter the arbitrage field when we have more money than ideas, but only to participate in announced merger and sales. We would be a lot happier if the funds currently employed on this short-term basis found a long-term home. At the moment, however, prospects are bleak. Charlie and I know that the right players will make almost any team manager look good. We subscribe to the philosophy of Ogilvy and Matters founding genius David Ogilvy. If each of us hires people who are smaller than we are, we shall become a company of dwarfs. But if each of us hires people who are bigger than we are, we shall become a company of giants. In general, the businesses described in this section can be characterized as having very strong market positions, very high returns on capital employed, and the best of operating managements. If our success were to depend upon insights we developed through plant inspections, Berkshire would be in big trouble. Rather, in considering an acquisition, we attempt to evaluate the economic characteristics of the business, its competitive strengths and weaknesses, and the quality of the people we will be joining. Fetchheimer was a standout in both respects. In addition to Bob and George Hellman, who are in their mid-60s, spring chickens by our standard, there are 3 members of the next generation, Gary, Roger and Fred, to ensure continuity. Common stocks of course are the most fun. When conditions are right, that is, when companies with good economics and good management sell well below intrinsic business value, stocks sometimes provide grand slam home runs. But we currently find no equities that come close to meeting our tests. This statement in no way translates into a stock market prediction. We have no idea and never have had whether the market is going to go up, down or sideways in the near or intermediate term future. What we do know, however, is that occasional outbreaks of those two super contagious diseases, fear and greed, will forever occur in the investment community. The timing of these epidemics will be unpredictable, and the market aberration produced by them will be equally unpredictable, both as to duration and degree. Therefore, we never try to anticipate the arrival or departure of either disease. Our goal is more modest. We simply attempt to be fearful when others are greedy, and to be greedy only when others are fearful. What really happens? When the corporate rate is cut, do Berkshire, the Washington Post, Cap Cities, etc. themselves soak up the benefits, or do these companies pass the benefits along to their customers in the form of lower prices? This is an important question for investors and managers, as well as for policymakers. Our conclusion is that in some cases, the benefits of lower corporate taxes fall exclusively or almost exclusively upon the corporation and its shareholders, and that in other cases, the benefits are entirely or almost entirely passed through to the customer. What determines the outcome is the strength of the corporation business franchise and whether the profitability of that franchise is regulated. For example, when the franchise is strong and after-tax profits are regulated in a relatively precise manner, as is the case with electric utilities, changes in corporate tax rates are largely reflected in prices, not in profits. When taxes are cut, prices will usually be reduced in short order. When taxes are increased, prices will rise, though often not as promptly. A similar result occurs in a second arena, in the price-competitive industry, whose companies typically operate with very weak business franchises. In such industries, the free market regulates after-tax profit in a delayed and irregular but generally effective manner. The marketplace in effect performs much the same function in dealing with the price-competitive industry as the Public Utilities Commission does in dealing with electric utilities. In these industries, therefore, tax changes eventually affect prices more than profits. In the case of unregulated businesses blessed with strong franchises, however, it is a different story. The corporation and its shareholders are then the major beneficiaries of tax cuts. These companies benefit from a tax cut much as the electric company would if it lacked a regulator to force down prices. Many of our businesses, both those we own in whole and in part, possess such franchises. Consequently, reduction in their taxes largely end up in our pocket rather than the pockets of our customers. While this may be impolitic to state, it is impossible to deny. If you are tempted to believe otherwise, think for a moment of the most able brain surgeon or lawyer in your area. Do you really expect the fees of this expert, the local franchise holder in his or her specialty, to be reduced now that the top personal tax rate is being cut from 50 to 28%? Your joy at our conclusion that lower rates benefit a number of our operating businesses and investees should be severely tempered, however, by another of our convictions, Scheduled 1998 tax rates, both individual and corporate, seem totally unrealistic to us. These rates will very likely bestow a fiscal problem on Washington that will prove incompatible with price stability. We believe therefore that ultimately, within say 5 years, either higher tax rates or higher inflation rates are almost certain to materialize, and it would not surprise us to see both. Agatha Christie, whose husband was an archaeologist, said that was the perfect profession for one spouse. The older you become, the more interested they are in you. One further aspect of our debt policy deserves comment. Unlike many in the business world, we prefer to finance in anticipation of need rather than in reaction to it. A business obtains the best financial results possible by managing both sides of its balance sheet well. This means obtaining the highest possible return on assets and the lowest possible cost on liabilities. It would be convenient if opportunities for intelligent action on both fronts coincided. However, reason tells us that just the opposite is likely to be the case. Tight money conditions, which translate into high costs for liabilities, will create the best opportunities for acquisitions. And cheap money will cause assets to be bid to the sky. Our conclusion: action on the liability side should sometimes be taken independent of any action on the asset side. Alas, what is tight and cheap money is far from clear at any particular time. We have no ability to forecast interest rates, and maintaining our usual open-minded spirit believes that no one else can. Therefore, we simply borrow when conditions seem non-oppressive and hope that we will later find intelligent expansion or acquisition opportunities, which, as we have said, are most likely to pop up when conditions in the debt market are clearly oppressive. Our basic principle is that if you want to shoot rare, fast-moving elephants, you should always carry a loaded gun. Fast to 24 years later, the Chinese KW Products, a small Berkshire subsidiary that produces automotive compounds. 4 years, KW did well, but in 1985-86 it stumbled badly as it pursued the unattainable to the neglect of the achievable. Charlie, who oversees KW, knew that there was no need to consult me. Instead, he called Harry, now 68 years old, made him CEO, and sat back to wait the inevitable. He didn't wait longer. In 1987, KW profit set a record, up more than 300% from 1986. And as profits went up, capital employed went down. KW investment in accounts receivable and inventories has decreased 20%. if we run into another managerial problem 10 or 20 years down the road, you know whose phone will ring. Super managers are too scarce a resource to be discarded simply because a cake gets crowded with scandals. Moreover, our experience with newly minted MBAs has not been that great. Their academic records always look terrific and the candidates always know just what to say. But too often they are short on personal commitment to the company and general business savvy. It is difficult to teach a new dog old tricks. But as happens in Wall Street all too often, what the wise do in the beginning, fools do in the end. Soon borrowers found even the new lax standard intolerably binding. To induce lenders to finance even sillier transactions, they introduce an abomination, EBITDA en français, earning before depreciation, interest and taxes, as a test of a company's ability to pay interest. Using this pseudo-fiasting, the borrower ignored depreciation as an expense on the theory that it did not require a current cash outlay. Such an attitude is clearly delusional. At 95% of American businesses, capital expenditures that over time roughly approximate depreciation are a necessity and are every bit as real an expense as labor or utility costs. Even a high school dropout knows that to finance a car he must have income that covers not only interest and operating expenses, but also realistically calculated depreciation. He would be laughed out of the bank if he started talking about EBITDA. Capital outlays that a business can be skipped, of course, in any given month. But just as a human can skip a day or even a week of eating, if the skipping becomes routine and is not made up, the body weakens and eventually dies. Furthermore, a start and stop feeding policy will over time produce a less healthy organism, human or corporate, than that produced by a steady diet. As businessmen, Charlie and I relish having competitors who are unable to fund capital expenditures. To quote Robert Benchley, having a dog teaches a boy fidelity, perseverance, and to turn around 3 times before lying down. Such are the shortcomings of experience. Nevertheless, it is a good idea to review past mistakes before committing new ones, so let's take a quick look at the last 25 years. If you buy a stock at a sufficient low price, there will usually be some hiccup in the fortunes of the business that give you a chance to unload at a decent profit. Even though the long-term performance of the business may be terrible, I call this the cigar butt approach to investing. A cigar butt found on the street that has only one puff left in it may not offer much of a smoke, but the bargain purchase will make that puff all profit.